Okay. Can you guys hear me okay? Yes, good. All right. I am going to go ahead and start. We are recording. And then if you have questions, feel free to type them in the chat. Once I get done with the presentation, I'll come back in to the chat and answer any questions that are in there. If you are attending the live, you'll also get the recording so you can watch it at a later date. Or if you signed up for this webinar, you will also have access to it afterwards. I will send it out to your email, which you're watching now, so that's great. Thank you. Okay, so first of all, I want to start with saying that I'm going to be talking about gut health, some gut issues, symptoms, a few diseases out there that that I'll just want to touch briefly on, but then also the importance of food and which foods might be causing problems for you, and then which foods to be putting back into your diet to make sure that you have a very good, healthy gut system. But I want to preface this with saying that there are no bad foods out there unless you have a whole systemic inflammatory allergic reaction to food. I don't want you to think of any food as being bad. That's when we can get into feeling guilt and remorse after eating foods, and that's never a healthy thing either. So I want you to remember that when you are choosing your foods, to choose the best ones for you. And sometimes at that time, the best ones for you is a piece of cake. And that's okay in moderation. So just remember that. And then also when I'm talking about these foods, I'm never intending for there to be bad foods out there for you, or you can only eat this, you can only eat that. It might sound like that in my presentation, but that's never my intention, is that there's going to be foods that are completely off limits for you, because life is better in balance. But sometimes finding that balance is realizing things that you didn't know before and educating yourself. So that is my full intention for this webinar, is to educate you, bring light to certain things in your body, and let you make the decision from there on what's best for you. So that being said, let's get started. Okay. Megan Kelly, I can see you on my screen. Can you see my presentation? Just nod yes, or okay, thank you. Okay, so gut health. So first of all, I want to talk about what are the key roles of your gut. This is important in knowing because if one of these roles is off, then your entire system will be off, and then that's when we end up with unwanted symptoms. So the first one, digestion. Second one, absorption of nutrients. Third one is your immune system. That's actually one of the main things I want to talk about today, is your immune system and how it lies in your gut. Symbiosis, which is basically the harmony of your gut, and how your systems all work off of each other because of this symbiosis and this happiness and this harmony in your body. And then the last one is elimination, which needs to happen. And there's a lot of problems out there with elimination. So we're going to talk about that too. So the first one, digestion. This is pretty self-explanatory, but it starts in the mouth, moves through your esophagus to your stomach, to your small intestine, and then out the end. That's the whole digestive process. Absorption is an important part. Obviously, we're eating so that we can have fuel and so we can have nutrients in our body. The absorption actually happens in your small intestine. A lot of people think it happens in your stomach, but it doesn't happen until foods move out of your stomach. When your stomach breaks that food down, moves it into your small intestine, and then that's when the absorption happens with all those vitamins and minerals, your carbs, your fats, your proteins that we talk about all the time, and then the water that you drink too. But if absorption is off in your body, which can be from various things, which we'll talk about shortly, then you're not actually getting the benefits of the food. So your diet can be the healthiest diet out there. It means nothing if you're not absorbing your food, right? You need to have that absorption happen. Okay. Next is the symbiosis. So that's the harmony within your body. So we're talking about gut bacteria when we're talking about symbiosis. So it's the healthy and balanced gut bacteria. Um, on the other side of that is dysbiosis, which is the problem that many people have with their gut. And so that's when bad bacteria takes over and there's less good bacteria. So causes of that dysbiosis or that bad bacteria in your body, the number one reason is antibiotic use. We are getting better in this day to having decreased antibiotics only when necessary. However, they still can be overly used. And if you can get by without an antibiotic, without the actual, not asking for antibiotics just because you think you need it, but because you actually do need it. Because once you take that antibiotic, it kills off all the bacteria in your body, good and bad, which is great when you have a bad infection. It helps heal you really quick, but it's not great on the upside of trying to heal from it because then all your good bacteria is gone. And then you kind of have to start re-inoculate things in your body and get you back to that good, healthy balance. Um, Another cause of dysbiosis would be chronic indigestion or reflux. So, if you were constantly having that acid reflux coming up from your stomach into your esophagus, that kind of like burning sensation in here. Well, then we often are popping things like Tums and things to decrease acid. Well, the medications that decrease acid also decrease that good bacteria in your body. And so that can actually cause bad bacteria to overgrow. Chronic constipation, and then stress. Stress can be a factor for all things that happen in your body that aren't favorable. You can always lead it back to stress. So, making sure that you have a good stress relieving regimen and that you are keeping stress a little bit lower, it will help with some of that dysbiosis. If you're wondering what does it feel like, what does it look like to have that bad bacteria in your body, what symptoms might you be having? Recurrent diarrhea, so you go back and forth from diarrhea to constipation. That would be a sign of bad bacteria. If you have significant gas or bloating, especially after you eat, feeling stuffed after meals. So let's say you eat a normal amount of food, but you absolutely feel stuffed, like you cannot eat anymore. You're uncomfortable. You can't even drink water. It's just like that super full feeling that's just like stuff not moving throughout your body. That would be a symptom of bad bacteria moving up into your stomach, causing that gas and bloating and that major distension. Not normal. And it is a common symptom that I see is that people have a ton of bacteria or a ton of bloating after they eat, which sometimes you call like a food baby. And it's not necessarily because you ate a whole bunch of food. It's actually because of the gas and the bloating that's coming up from your small intestine into your gut. And that's causing that expansion. It's causing you to feel miserable. So that would be a sign of some bad bacteria going on in your body too. Rashes and skin problems. So if you have some weird like skin things going on, that could be a sign of some poor gut health, some more bad bacteria going on. Some other skin problems that I often see is acne. So if acne is kind of if it's been a recurrent problem for you, it kind of goes off and on, or it's all of a sudden come on and you haven't really changed anything in your like skincare regimen, you haven't added anything new or taken anything out, it might be a sign that things are not great in your gut. Your gut is actually a really good, so your skin is, sorry, I want to go back there. Your skin is a great display on what's going on in your gut. So if your skin has, if you're really red, if you have a lot of acne or you just have major skin problems, things, you're really dull, your skin just doesn't look great anywhere, face, body, whatever, that is what's going on the inside of your gut. So look at your face, look at your skin. If it looks healthy, your gut's probably pretty good. If it's not looking so great, you may be thinking like, oh, what's going on the inside that's exasperating on the outside? Um, a really interesting study that they did is so they had some diabetic mice. And what they did is they took the bacteria, the gut bacteria from those diabetic mice, and they put it into healthy mice. And what happened is that those healthy mice actually turned diabetic, even without changing their their food intake and their exercise regimen. They kept them on the same regimen that they normally had been, and they turned into diabetics. And that is how powerful your gut bacteria is. So when I'm talking about the dysbiosis and the symbiosis, this is really, really important stuff. Also, what was I going to say? They have also found that people who are overweight or obese tend to have more harmful bacteria in their gut rather than healthy bacteria. So they have increase in bad and a decrease in good bacteria. Now, this probably goes into the reason why someone might be overweight or obese is because of food choices. And so that's probably why, but that just goes to show too that that gut bacteria really is a good indicator and a good sign on what the outside of our body is like. Let's see here. Okay, let's go to our next slide, which is immune regulation. So 70% of your immune system is actually located in your gut. So if your digestive system is healthy, you're probably absorbing nutrients. You're probably have a great immune system. You can fight off things that are minor to your body, and you don't get taken down by those things. So unhealthy gut can lead to partially digested food particles entering your body, leading to an overstimulated immune system. So this goes into something called leaky gut, which I do have a slide on that coming up here, but I'll touch on that briefly. So our immune system, a healthy immune system is located inside the gut. When our gut is not healthy, it becomes very thin and it becomes permeable, hyperpermeable. So think about a garbage bag with a bunch of tiny little holes in it, right? You throw your garbage into that garbage bag. Well, if your garbage bag has some holes in it, your garbage is going to leak outside. And then it goes out here, which is your bloodstream. And so when those food particles are going through those holes, they go into your bloodstream, your body says, hey, this isn't okay. This is not normal. This is foreign. This is somebody bad in your body. I'm going to attack it. And then you end up with a hyperstimulated immune response, which then can lead to autoimmune diseases. It can lead to depression. It can lead to like chronic migraines, chronic headaches, chronic pain, because your immune system is just overstimulated by the stuff that's not supposed to be in there. And then the next one, elimination. So that's the frequency of your bowel movements. If you're having infrequent bowel movements, you'll have an increased amount of toxins in your body. This will affect your ability to lose weight, and it'll just make you feel like crap. There's not a magic number of times you should be going per day or per week. However, most people do well with at least once per day. However, everybody's unique, and you may find that you do best by going more than once a day or once every 2 days. Typically, we don't like to see any more than once every 3 days. That's really the minimum that we can keep you at for elimination. But the healthiest part, it comes to actually what your bowel movements are like, what's the formation of them, and then how solid are they? Are you having frequent bouts of constipation and diarrhea? That's not normal. You should be having normal, consistent bowel movements. So if you're somebody who feels best going every day, you should be going every day. If you're somebody who feels best going twice a day, you should be going twice a day. So, and then your bowel movements should be similar in formation and pattern. That's the healthiest. So going back to leaky gut, when I was just talking about having those holes, that garbage bag analogy. So this happens from the tight junctions. So your stomach wall lining, your small intestine lining, it is rather thin, but the junctions of it are very tight. Like it should be like nothing should be getting in. It should be super, super tight. But when your gut becomes hyperpermeable, so that can happen from stress, poor diet, infections, antibiotic use, low stomach acid, antibiotics, like I said, NSAIDs, which is non-steroidal anti-inflammatory medication, so like ibuprofen, naproxen. There's some prescriptions that are NSAIDs also. And then toxic exposure, so things like preservatives and pesticides that are often in our foods that we're just not paying attention to. So those things can cause leaky gut, causing those junctions to open just a little bit. And think about tiny food particles. They don't need to be very big, and they are leaking through. They're going through that wall. And then, like I said, that food then is on the other side. It's in your blood system, or it's in your blood flow, and that will stimulate your immune system, because your immune system is like, hey, this isn't supposed to be in here. We need to attack this. Well, then that ends up in a full body inflammation attack, and can lead to some pretty miserable symptoms. So things like chronic diarrhea and constipation. So if you're going back and forth between the two, not normal. Headaches, chronic fatigue, confusion, or if you have a lot of brain fog, you just can't seem to snap out of it, no matter how much caffeine you have throughout the day. You're always feeling that general like malaise, just like no energy, thoughts aren't connecting, everything feels just harder. Skin problems such as eczema, acne, rashes, joint pain, and then like I said, the widespread inflammation. Okay, so foods, let's talk about foods in your gut. There's a few of them that I want to talk about that are going to be triggers for some of these symptoms and problems that I've just talked about. So the first one is dairy. The reason why dairy can be a problem is because dairy now is pasteurized. They've done that because that eliminates bacteria, that eliminates us from getting like food poisoning and having poor reactions to dairy. However, it actually eliminates the enzyme that we need to digest dairy. So this causes lactose intolerance. So if you're somebody who you can't have dairy, it's very obvious that after you have dairy, you're pretty miserable. That's because of the enzyme. However, actually 70% of us lack the enzyme needed to digest dairy. So even if you're not lactose intolerant, you may notice that you still have symptoms of dairy intolerance. You maybe don't have as severe symptoms as somebody who's been diagnosed as lactose intolerant, but you may still have some bloating with certain products. Like some people will only bloat with cheese. Some people will only bloat if they have a significant amount of dairy. So like they've had cheese and milk and yogurt all in one day, and then they feel kind of miserable afterwards. So those would all be signs of intolerance. It's just intolerance at different levels. Also, when we're talking about intolerance, intolerance is an immediate reaction. It's not systemic. It's contained only in your stomach, your GI system. It's not something that happens on your entire body. Whereas if you were allergic to dairy, that's a systemic reaction. It involves everything. And that is a little more severe, but keep in mind, lactose intolerance, it's contained into the gut. And so that's where your symptoms will be, just in the gut. The next one would be gluten. So gluten, it's a family of proteins. And again, the human body doesn't have the exact enzymes it needs to fully digest gluten. And so when that happens, then we can end up with gluten being outside the body from the leaky gut. And then our body responds to it. It creates that full systemic inflammation and general feelings of not feeling great, not feeling your best. Also, gluten, when you look at the particle, gluten actually looks very similar to our thyroid hormone. And so if you have leaky gut where things are going outside and your body sees that, it actually might think it's a thyroid hormone, and then it either decreases the amount of thyroid it's producing or overproduces thyroid. So that can come, a lot of times gluten and thyroid can have issues together. So if you're somebody who has a suspicion of a thyroid, like low or high, obviously see your doctor, but know that gluten could be exacerbating that. Now, our wheat products contain about 30 to 50% more gluten than they did way long time ago when our ancestors were starting to develop wheat products and starting to make them into breads and probably bread, I don't know, pasta, things like that. So there's a ton more gluten in the foods that we're eating now than we were hundreds of years ago. So our bodies aren't they're not evolved enough to digest that much gluten. So if you're somebody who eats a lot of carbohydrates like breads and pastas, baked goods, things like that, you will have a lot of gluten in your system, and your body may not love that. So something to think about. Also, many gluten products contain glyphosate, which is also known as Roundup. And glyphosate has been directly linked to leaky gut and dysbiosis. So Roundup is a pesticide. And so it actually has a direct effect on your gut. It's been proven. Roundup is actually banned now in New York, but it's banned in Europe, which Europe is always light years ahead of the United States when it comes to food safety. But New York has just recently banned Roundup, which is, it speaks volumes that Roundup really, it does make an impact on your gut. And so once you have that leaky gut, then you're really, you're opening yourself to a can of worms, almost literally. So, and then glyphosate is also used on other things too, which we'll talk about in a minute, but it is often used on gluten. If your gluten product is organic, non-GMO, it will not have Roundup on it. So if you're going to have gluten or wheat products, you'll want to look for organic versions. And then soy. Some soy is okay. Moderation is usually fine unless you notice that it really significantly disrupts you. So that actually can interrupt the absorption of essential minerals, which can cause thyroid dysfunction. Okay, next we are going to talk about sugar. So sugar is actually the #1 culprit for gut and health problems. And sugar, when I talk about sugar, I'm not just talking about the white table sugar that you see sitting on grandma's kitchen table that was so often poured over everything. It's not just that. It's everything that's an added sugar. So honey, agave, brown sugar, high fructose corn syrup, and there's so many names out there. I wouldn't even be able, this would be a whole other webinar if I was going to talk about all the other names that include sugar. So it's important to start to become familiar with your food labels. And also if, look at the nutrients, if there's added sugars in it, there's added sugars in it. It's not a naturally occurring sugar, which like fruit would be a naturally occurring sugar, things like that. So definitely pay attention to your food labels. If it has added sugar, you know that in all those ingredients on that label, there is sugar in there. So sugar causes insulin resistance. So that means when our blood sugar goes up, our insulin goes up. Over time, if that continues to happen, we start to become insensitive to insulin, and our body just doesn't do what it should be doing. And then we just have continuously high blood glucose. That in itself can create a whole slew of problems, but it's important to remember that it all derives from sugar. It's also linked to increased body weight. It's an unsustainable source of energy. So when you have sugar, you immediately feel pretty good afterwards. It gives you that little boost to get your workout in, to get it done. You might be able to feel pretty good. I mean, like happy, it makes you feel good, but you immediately, about an hour afterwards, will experience a crash. And so that's why it's unsustainable. It's very short term. It's also linked to decreased intake of essential nutrients, mostly because if we're eating sugars, we're not eating maybe things that we actually need to give our body. It can lead to fatty liver disease. If you haven't heard of fatty liver disease, that's when your liver is holding on to fructose, which will then create a fatty liver. Now, fructose is sugar, it's a form of sugar. It's also where fruit sugar comes from, but a lot of times it's very processed, and then it creates a fructose mimicry, basically. So your liver will hold on to that. Now, I will say that I didn't really expect fatty liver disease to be as common as it actually is. There are so many people out there who have fatty liver who don't even realize it. And to just give you a little bit of a realization, I take very few one-on-one clients, maybe 5 to 7 at a time. In the past couple months, I've had 2 very young women with fatty liver disease. So that just speaks to the volume on how prevalent it is because of our crazy sugar intake, how much we eat in a day. It really, really does make a difference on your body. Sugar can also raise cholesterol, and it also feeds cancer cells. That's been shown that it, it makes cancer grow. It makes cancer move throughout the body. It makes it spread. So that's just something to keep in mind. Also, sugar produces toxins. So when it's in your gut, it produces a toxin, which makes you feel kind of like crummy. It gives you brain fog, and then it also makes you irritable. So then what do you do when you feel that? You go for more sugar, and then you feel good for a little while, and then it releases those toxins, and then you feel irritable and you feel foggy, and then you go back for more sugar. And so it's just a constant um, cycle of sugar, no sugar, sugar, no sugar, feeling like crap, needing more sugar. So, yes. And then the other, what was I to say? Okay, so sugar also, it changes your taste buds. And so it actually influences your opioid and cannabinoid receptors. So that is a receptor in your brain that receives dopamine and serotonin and makes you feel really good. And so if we're changing our taste buds to match what our brain thinks that we need, we're constantly craving sugar. And then once we eat those healthy foods like broccoli and cauliflower and carrots and greens, things that aren't full of sugar, our taste buds are like, not what I need, don't really want it. And we don't get that feel good dopamine hit. So if we're constantly eating sugar, we're constantly triggering that taste bud too, and our brain tells our taste bud, this is good, I want more, give me more. And that's another cycle. And our gut bacteria then also knows how to make us happy, and it knows how to make us crabby because it's constantly triggering things to make us feel good. Let's see here. Next is corn and lectins. So corn, it can mimic gluten and how your body looks at it on the inside once it's broken down. So it can mimic gluten. It is also considered a grain. So if you're somebody who needs to stay away from grains, which is separate from gluten, keep that in mind. Grains and gluten are different. However, grains look very similar to gluten in your body. So if you're hypersensitive, you may be somebody who can't do a lot of grains if you're sensitive to gluten. So something to keep in mind. They often contain glyphosate, that Roundup. So if you're choosing corn, always choose organic. And then nightshade vegetables, they can contain some things that cause your immune system to flare up a little bit, and then they can cause some GI distress. So nightshade vegetables would be like tomatoes, potatoes, peppers. There's a few other ones. Those are things that, if you suspect them, would be part of an elimination diet. Okay, GERD. Oh. So GERD, reflux, acid reflux, we hear about it all the time. It's a huge problem in the United States because people are constantly eating junk food, and that junk food moves up into the esophagus because junk food produces bad bacteria in your stomach, and bad bacteria causes the food to go up into your esophagus, which just causes that burn sensation in your chest, and can make you feel kind of crummy. So however, most people, there's a short-term solution called acid blockers. So many of you have either been on them or have taken them before, or you've popped a few Tums to try to make yourself feel better. It's a short-term solution. It works at the time. However, in the long term, it decreases nutrient absorption because you increase the bad bacteria in your gut. If you're decreasing nutrient absorption, one of the things that can come up is osteoporosis. So if you have GERD, if you have a lot of reflux or you frequently feel that, some things that you might want to avoid would be gluten, carbonation, caffeine, acidic juices, cheese, spicy or fried foods, sauteed onions is a huge one, and then gum. That constant like air in your tummy can cause things to want to move up. So you can heal GERD by changing your diet. So eliminate the foods that trigger you, and decrease actually the acid the acid blockers. I'm just going to touch briefly on elimination diets because that is a whole another webinar that we could be talking about. But basically, if you suspect any dysbiosis, which is that bad bacteria, if you suspect leaky gut, things like that, then it would be a good idea to start an elimination diet. A few things I want to tell you about that is that you should eliminate the trigger foods for at least 4 weeks. At the end of 4 weeks, you slowly introduce one at a time over 1 week. Then the next week, you move on to the next food. You eliminate or you slowly add that in over a whole week, and then the next, and then the next. The foods that you should think about eliminating would be dairy, gluten, corn, sugar, and inflammatory oils, which is any man-made vegetable oil, any man-made oil, canola oil, safflower oil, sunflower oil, peanut oil, those are all inflammatory. Only stick with olive oil, avocado oil, coconut oil. Those are three that are safe bets when it comes to an oil you should use. So other options, if you don't want to go into a full-blown elimination diet, because if you're going to do an elimination diet, I always say if you're going to start it, you need to finish it. Don't start for 2 weeks and then go to a birthday party and have a bunch of cake and ice cream and then go back into it, because that's not an accurate assessment of it at all. And just don't do it if you're going to not go full-blown into an elimination diet. Let's say you're suspicious about things, but you're not fully sure on what's going up. Clean up your diet. That is going to be huge for you. So eliminate processed foods. If it's processed, just say no. Choose your foods that are whole in nature and clean. Clean as in like less preservatives, because even if it's like a whole food, like cauliflower rice, and it's in the frozen food section, it might have some preservatives in it. So make sure you're taking a look at that. Also, if it's organic, it's not going to contain that Roundup glyphosate that I talked about. So that would be something that you'd want to also change out in your diet. When I'm talking about processed foods, it would be anything that's processed with pesticides, anything that's probably packaged, things like that. So just be very cognizant of what you're putting into your body. Decrease your dairy intake. So this is what I do. I generally don't have dairy unless it's like a special occasion and I'm maybe going to a birthday party and I'm going to be there for several hours and there's maybe some ice cream that I want to have. I might have some dairy. Or let's say it's pizza night at our house and I don't want to make myself a separate pizza. I might have a slice of regular dairy cheese pizza. However, most of the time, I'm not putting cheese on my taco. I'm not drinking a glass of milk. My yogurt is in like nut or seed form. So like almond yogurt or coconut yogurt. I don't have dairy yogurt. And I am somebody who actually doesn't even I don't think I have a dairy intolerance at all. But do I make better decisions if I don't have dairy? Absolutely. 100%. So dairy in that way impacts me that I don't make the best decisions. Now, I don't have like the full on bloating or anything like that after I have ice cream or things like that. I can tolerate it just fine, but I just don't make the best decisions when I have dairy. Gluten, only when options are limited. So if you are going out to eat and it's, like a fast food place and you don't really have any other options than getting a burger, then just have it. As long as you're not celiac or you have major inflammatory autoimmune disease problems, you're probably going to be fine. Should you do that every day? Like, no, you know that. No, you shouldn't do that every day. I avoid gluten, not because I don't think I really have an intolerance to that either, but I avoid it because do I replace the gluten with? Vegetables. So if I fill up on vegetables, I don't really feel like I need the bun or the bread or pasta. I choose a vegetable over the gluten form of whatever food it is. So like when I'm making dinner in the evenings, I don't make my family avoid gluten because they don't have any problems with it either. So if it's spaghetti night, they all get spaghetti. I'm probably going to have zoodles or chickpea pasta because I just feel better. I know that that product has more fiber in it. I know that it doesn't have added sugars into it, and I know that it benefits me better. So I always choose my vegetable before I choose a gluten product. No added sugars. That's kind of a big rule of mine is that anything you eat shouldn't have an added sugar in it. That's not necessary. It also, like I said, it changes your taste buds. So even artificial sweeteners should be a no-go for you. Artificial sweeteners have also been shown to change your gut bacteria to more bad bacteria versus good bacteria. So Diet Coke, I love Diet Coke, I will admit, but I only have it as a treat every once in a while. It's not something I have every day, but it does change your bacteria in your gut. And then anything else that has an added sugar in it probably isn't benefiting you anyway. And there's different things that you could choose that would be better for you. And then eggs, they should be free range, not, if it doesn't say free range on the container, it's not a free range chicken, and it's a chicken that's raised into a confined environment. It just lays the eggs, and it's not a healthy chicken. You know how much I love chickens, so it should be a happy, healthy chicken, and then those eggs are going to be much more tolerated and well digested in your body and used versus an egg from an unhealthy chicken. Those eggs are not going to benefit you as much, and they might cause some gut issues. And so then what do? We build our plate. First step in building your plate, start with clean protein. So this can be wild salmon, grass-fed, grass-finished beef. Remember, if your animal is happy and healthy, the product it produces for you, beef, is going to be much healthier for you. Free-range chicken, wild game, and then any vegan or beef isolate protein powder. I forgot to include in there. You can also do collagen powder. However, if your protein intake is on the lower side, when I say lower, I'd say less than 100 grams a day. Collagen isn't a full amino acid profile, and you need all 9 amino acids to get a complete protein. Then I would stay away from collagen because it's probably not doing what it needs to do as far as what your protein intake is. But if you're getting about 100 grams a day in, then I think collagen is just fine. Let's see, where are we? Okay, step 2, add in your vegetables. You want to have 2 servings of vegetables, about fist-sized, like this, per meal. So that is 6 to 8 a day. This is optimal health. There's not a lot of room for other stuff, other processed foods, a lot of gluten, a lot of pasta, sugars, ice cream, if you're having 6 to 8 of these a day. Okay. Next, high quality fats, super important for a healthy body, 2 thumb size per meal. That includes avocado, oils, even the oils you cook with, nuts and seeds, nut butters, all those. So in a day, it'll probably be about six of these. And then step number 4 is a serving of carbohydrates if you feel still hungry. So after you think about if you eat all of that, if you're full and content, you don't really need to add in those carbs. But if you're not full and content, absolutely have the carbs. That includes like sweet potatoes, white rice, brown rice, quinoa. Rice in the white or brown form, quinoa, similar grains, which would be okra. Those are grains, which remember can mimic gluten. So if you have a gluten intolerance, that's important that you'll want to remember that for grains. They may not agree with you. Next, stubborn weight loss. So your metabolic rate, which is how much energy it takes your body to keep you alive. It relies on things like your gut bacteria, the enzymes in your gut, which relates to gut bacteria, and your ability to absorb nutrients, which relates to your gut bacteria. So those 3 things are a direct correlation on how efficient your body is. We want our body to be really efficient. We want to be able to eat foods and burn it without gaining a bunch of weight. And so that's very important that we have that good, healthy bacteria. Let's see here. A recent study found that the ratio of the 2 types of bacteria in your intestine determines how much weight you lose when given a particular diet. So Prevotella digests fiber and carbohydrates. Um, and then the one that starts with a B, which I'm not going to try to say because I don't know how, and I'll sound like an idiot, so I'm just not going to say. So 62 people were given the high fiber whole grain diet for 26 weeks. They had more of that good bacteria than the bad bacteria, which starts with a B. And the people with the good bacteria lost 5 pounds more in that study. Also, your gut bacteria will digest certain antioxidants found in plants, known as flavonoids, and flavonoids help prevent weight gain. And then the gut bacteria influences how dietary fats are absorbed in your intestine, and that can affect how fat is stored in your body. Also, one other thing would be to quick touch on is intermittent fasting. Super important to allow your digestive system to relax and not digest food while you're sleeping. So avoid eating 3 hours before bedtime and then have a minimum of 12 hours per night of not eating. So if you stopped eating at 7 p.m., you don't eat again until 7 a.m. That's really like a hard and fast rule as far as I have for myself and my clients, that everyone has 12 hours without eating. There's no reason in this day and age that you need to eat any more frequently than that. And if you do, then there's a whole slew of problems that we need to talk about. Okay, so some supplements. If you are suspecting some imbalance in your body, there's a few things that you can add in that may help you. The first one is digestive enzymes. So if you have a lot of bloating after you eat, like I talked about that like food baby belly after eating, and you're so stuffed you can't do anything, you could easily add in digestive enzymes. You can get those at any food supplement store. Glutamine helps rebuild the gut lining. Magnesium will help with regular bowel movements and then also muscle recovery. Magnesium is something I personally take every evening before bed. It just helps keep your muscles relaxed and be able to recover. And that also includes your intestines and your colon. So this will help you get into more of a regular schedule without adding in like medications like Miralax or things like that are not great long term. Magnesium is something you can and should continue to take for the rest of your life. Our diets are not very high in magnesium because of our soil. Our soil has changed dramatically in the last few hundred years. And so it is not as magnesium rich. So many of us are lacking in this nutrient anyway. Collagen, this one can help provide amino acids to also heal your gut. And then vitamin D. So this can help decrease colon cancer risk. In this time of year, we're starting to get more sunshine, but in the wintertime, it's important to supplement with vitamin D. How much depends on how deficit you are. So that would be something to talk with your doctor on how much to supplement with. And then a probiotic is really important. You'll want to have at least 4 to 5 strains of different bacteria in that probiotic, and then you should have at least 20 CFUs on it. So I did link one. You'll all get this this slide in your email, and so you can click right here, and it'll bring it to my favorite probiotic. And then, but if you decide to go out and find your own supplements, which is great, I always encourage that because you learn so much by looking at supplement bottles. But some things you want to keep in mind when you're looking. You want a clear description of ingredients, including the amounts. The recommended daily allowance and the daily value amounts should be on the label. Certifications, serving size of the supplement, the expiration should be on there along with a lot number, a batch and ID numbers. I would say if it has at least a lot number, you're good. I don't think you need all 3 of those. A lot number should suffice along with the expiration date. And then a third-party certification is important. Because if you're a supplement company, you actually don't, it's not regulated by the FDA. You can do whatever you want and put it in a container and call it whatever you want. If it's a third-party tested product, then you know that somebody else who has no affiliation with that original supplement has looked into it and verified that the ingredients are what the label says. So third-party certifications are important and kind of come as like a comforting measure when you're looking at supplements to know that it is what it actually is. Okay, and then when you get this slide, you will also get these 4 recipes. These are my favorites. You get some soup, you get some breakfast, you get some salmon. And then I also wanted to introduce to you my newest food prep power. This one is made specifically for a healthier gut. This plan is going to help you reset your gut. It's a 6-week meal plan. Just has, if you've seen my food prep powers in the past, it's several weeks of a meal plan with prep instructions and tells you exactly when you're eating your meals with the recipes and how to make it user and easy friendly so you're not eating the same thing all week, but also not in the kitchen every day slaving over your stove because nobody has time for that. These are all really good recipes. My last group, my last small group did this plan and they all love the recipes. They're really good. My family eats them. They are also going to be elimination diet friendly. So if you decide to completely eliminate dairy, gluten, corn, sugars, this plan will allow you to do that. So it will be something that you can follow head to toe, and you'll get through an elimination diet in 6 weeks, and I bet you won't even miss it. Most recipes are paleo or Whole30 approved, which is important because when it has that title, then you know it doesn't have those things in it. It's not dairy, it doesn't have grains, it doesn't have gluten, it doesn't have sugars, it doesn't have inflammatory oils. Take the guesswork out. All meals are ready to go in a template for you. Also, if you know, all my recipes are searchable in MyFitnessPal. If you log your foods, they're easy to find. Recipes are included. They're family friendly approved. My family eats these recipes. And then for attending the webinar or rewatching it, you'll get the special pricing, which is about 25% off. And so that is through this weekend. So if you want to grab this food prep power, you can click this link in here and that will bring you to the purchase page. If you have questions at all, please let me know if you have questions about that food prep power or any questions at all. So I'm going to turn this back on me. Thank you so much for coming or rewatching this. I hope that you learned what you wanted to find out, or I hope that this triggered some questions that you have for yourself or for me, and that maybe things that you have been experiencing aren't normal, that you've been trying to tell yourself are normal, or that the symptoms you're having maybe are normal and you don't need to worry about it as much. Or maybe you need to clean up your diet. I think that we all could clean up our diet. So I don't see any questions in the chat. So if you have questions from this, please feel free to email me. I'm always on the other side. It's me. I'm happy to ask any questions that you have. It also helps me understand what you guys are wondering about and what you need from me. So that's all I have. You guys have a great rest of your weekend. Bye.